r/ask Reddit. What was the worst job interview you've had? I had an interview where I knew the answers I gave were good, solid examples. I understood the technical side well, but the interviewer kept sneering, being rude and saying really in a skeptical tone, and I got the distinct impression he hated me. About 20 minutes in, I thought about politely calling it a day and leaving, but in my innocence thought it would be good practice to stay. 40 minutes in, it's like a light switch goes off inside and he's the nicest guy. His eyes light up and he started hard selling the role and position to me. Introduces me to the team. The director interviews me and he and the team are lovely. Apparently, their interview technique is to be rude to see how you perform under pressure, and they'd all been observing using a camera and were impressed I remained so polite and calm throughout. They couldn't understand why I declined. Edit. To save me responding to comments. I understand pressure testing is a legitimate technique, and whilst I felt deeply uncomfortable and my gut was screaming at me to get out of there like in a nightclub when you know the creepy guy is really bad news and you need to get out, I understood that it was a possibility that is what he could have been doing. However, to add more context, they had my work history including 10 years in the ambulance services, which involves resuscitation whilst the public yell at you and threaten you. I'm used to being polite and professional whilst being harassed and threatened. Nothing spreadsheet based. Even pulling all-nighters is going to match that for pressure, and I'm well known for staying calm and composed all the time, even if I'm exploding inside. My biggest objection was not realizing I was being broadcast and hearing them discuss my reactions to my face, like I was some kind of movie actor. It felt so violating. I don't want to work for a bunch of duplicitous bastards wasn't obvious to them. Duplicitous bastards, now there's a combination of words you don't hear often enough these days. At an interview to be a county street sweeper, guy asks me if I have a girlfriend, proceeds to rant for 5 minutes how young people don't get married anymore. Then he asks me what I want to avoid at the job. At the time I had no idea how to answer, as I'd never been asked that in an interview before. So I ask him to clarify, to which he just repeats the question over and over until he gets super angry that I don't know how to answer that, then asks me to leave. To this day, biggest WTF interview I've had. What would I like to avoid? Stupid questions. Maybe the correct answer would be cousin trees. Showed up looking good in my suit with a ton of knowledge on Capital Partners. It turned out I had researched the wrong company named Capital Partners. Could have been worse, dude. At least you didn't get the wrong 4 seasons. Oh, what a night. Interviewer. Putting candy bars on the table to open the interview. Have a candy bar. Do you want Hershey's or Snickers? Me. Neither. Thanks. I. Go ahead. Pick one. M. I don't want any candy now. Thanks. I. Take one. Hershey's or Snickers? M. Okay. I'll take the Snickers. I. No. I want the Snickers. You take the Hershey's. M. No. Thank you. Maybe they were trying to pull off some dumbass power move stunt that they saw in some movie. OMG, that's probably how my dad does his interviewing. He once hired a drivie with a suspended license, an accountant who couldn't balance a checkbook. A guy they stole all the furniture from the office. I'm sure his interviews are bizarre tests like this. Edit. He also kept on a CEO for a surgery center he was building after they forged a higher salary on legal agreement. I think he ended up paying him the higher AMT. That surgery center went bankrupt. You know who owns it now? COO. He also bought a vending business while a physician and eventually had 3 checking accounts overdrawn at one point. He was basically scammed. He invested 100,000 into penny stock. She invested 100,000 in some guy he met at the gym. Cryodynamics. I was interviewing for a job in Houston and lived in Austin, about 5 hours away. I drove to Houston for the first round of interviews, and they said it went well and wanted to bring me in for a final interview. So I drove there again. It seemed like it went well and they told me they had one more interview to conduct and would have a decision tomorrow. So the next day came and went. I emailed the manager to ask if any decision had been made. Nothing. Waited a couple more days. Left a voicemail. Nothing. Then a couple days later, I just called the main number for the company and told the receptionist why I was calling. She was like, well, Someone just started in that job yesterday. They ghosted me after I drove a total of 10 hours to interview twice. Still salty about that 11 years later. That's ducked up. It's simple courtesy to send a thanks but no thanks to rejected applicants. An email at the very least. A call would be best. Speaking from experience of being on both sides of the table. Even 11 years later. Sorry dude. In the past 3 years I've been to about a dozen interviews. I've not once received a notice of rejection. Only ghosting. I don't think courtesy emails are commonplace anymore. At least not for entry-level positions. Had an interview. Went well. I was offering the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork. Came back 10 minutes later and said I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry, but we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up. I said no thank you. Oh my god, this unlocked one I'd forgotten about. I left work on a long lunch to interview because they flat out refused to interview me at a time I was not at work. Sounds somewhat reasonable, but I had occasional weekdays off, 2-4 per month. There was also a convoluted process for validating my parking which I did. I showed up a bit early, waited about 40 minutes for someone I was told definitely was in, and apparently she was just eating lunch or something because on my way back to work I got a call from her asking where I was. She tried to reschedule. Stressful enough the first time. I'm not going to jump through hoops if you don't value me as a prospect enough to keep your own damn appointment. If she doesn't respect you as a potential employee, 100% she wouldn't respect you as an employee either. Video chat interview. Red flag number 1, the interview was with 10 interviewers. I was told it would be one-on-one. Red flag number 2. Towards the end they asked if I had any questions. When I asked, "Do you all enjoy working here?" they all looked at each other nervously for about 20 seconds until someone said, "Sure, I mean, as much as you can enjoy work, I guess." Nope. When you go in for a job interview, I think a good thing to ask is if they ever press charges. Jack Handay. I had a co-worker rob a convenience store. The footage was provided to the company and his clothes were found in a storage room. He kept his job. I told them I couldn't answer their questions. Farted audibly out of stress and thanked them for their time. I told them I couldn't answer their questions. Farted audibly out of stress and thanked them for their time. I just needed to see this bit on its own. It's a work of art. I just wanted to let you know I've been reading through this thread and your comment made me laugh until I cried. My personal favorite bad interview. I had been unemployed for a bit, was desperate for a new gig, had gained a lot of weight living off of fast food, so my good pants didn't fit me very well. I sat down in the interview chair as the person was walking around to their side of the desk. And the button of my pants popped off. Did a one-hopper off of the desk and right into their coffee cup. Swished. No clink at all. For the entire interview, they were sipping their coffee, and I was sitting there with my pants unbuttoned waiting for the big reveal. I left before they got to the bottom of their coffee, but they had to have put 2 and 2 together. Open bracket. This narrowly beats out the time I was offered water from a carafe at an interview. Dropped it, and soaked both interviewers. At least that one wasn't as psychologically tense. Edit. No, I didn't get the job. Edit 2. Yes, I should have told them, but I froze up, and they were a very talkative interviewer. This needs to be a short film. For real, this is a comedy sketch at least. Hilarious. Yeah, I have one that sticks out. I applied to a government branch as a network admin. The newspaper had asked for a bachelor's degree. They called me into the interview. When I got there, the first thing the interviewer said was, "We wanted someone with a master's degree. Why did you apply?" Now, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had other interviews that day and got them mixed up. Shit happens. I just informed the interviewer that the ad I applied for requested a bachelor's degree and confirmed the position I was interviewing for. No, we definitely wanted someone with a master's degree. So, again, why did you apply? If you wanted someone with a master's degree, why did you bother calling me in for an interview? You're very rude and unprofessional. Yep, you ducked up at every junction thus far, but I'm the one who's rude and unprofessional. I always have the job posting description printed. with notes on it. Had similar comments a couple times and it's nice to have it right there. Once had an interviewer say, I don't know where you got this. You posted it. I copy pasted. I once applied for a position and got asked to an interview. Even got the job. The resume they received was completely blank due to some duck up on the job site I used at the time. It just has my name number at the top. Was pretty weird when they asked me basic questions. I went in to apply for an administrative assistant position and the guy kept asking me questions about liking kids and are my passports up to date, etc. I was so confused. Turns out what he really wanted was a nanny for his 2 young kids to travel with him and his wife back to India. I was so pissed he wasted my time. I note right the duck out of there. If that's what he wanted, that's what he should have put in the job description. I'm sure he would have gotten plenty of qualified individuals to apply. Right, a lot of people take nanny jobs specifically for the purpose of living abroad or traveling. I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to find a qualified person who would actually want that job. Started as the worst and ended as the best. The beginning started like this. I'm so sorry to have to inform you of this, but we pulled the wrong resume contact information. We didn't mean to call you in for an interview. Before leaving, the interviewer gave me a brief tour of the company grounds. Because they felt so bad for wasting my time, they introduced me to the department head that I would have been working for, open bracket, if that department was actually hiring. Had a great conversation and the department head was convinced that I would be an asset to them, and they hired me on the spot. Edit. Just wanted to add, since this got way more attention than I thought, that I have been with this company for over 8 years now, and they are an awesome bunch of people. It was a very lucky day for me. I had something similar to this but not as good of an ending. I got an email asking to do an interview for a company, but it was addressing somebody else. They were emailing me when they meant to email somebody else. Tried play it off like I didn't notice and thought maybe they'd be cool about it and let me come in for an interview anyways. They weren't having it. They felt bad for wasting your time but wanted to waste more of it. Realized it was a pyramid scheme halfway through the interview. I was already working so didn't accept the job. Did their job description begin with hey hun? Hey hun orange heart, just living my best life over here. Man doing a cartwheel, wanted to see, cross-eyed grinning face with stuck out tongue. Cross-eyed grinning face with stuck out tongue. How you're doing, we need to catch up and let me tell you. Smiling face, I am happier than ever with money. Face with money symbols on the eyes and tongue. Face with money symbols on the eyes and tongue. In my pocket and more time. Hourglass with flowing sand. Hourglass with flowing sand. For the important things. Clinking champagne glasses. Aeroplane. I applied for an internship at a human rights law office. They gave me questions on the spot to debate with them. Like, should people accused of rape remain anonymous until convicted, and is bribery acceptable if it's for a good cause? It was me versus a panel of 5 senior human rights lawyers for a whole hour, who just ripped me apart from start to finish. Everything I said, they made sound like the dumbest response with their rebuttals. By the end I was a nervous babbling wreck. Did not get the internship, but did appreciate the experience in retrospect. When they got back to me, they told me your CV, resume, was fantastic, so we were quite disappointed with how poor your interview was. Burn. That seems kinda cheap. Give you question that you probably never thought about and ask you to debate with 5 people who've probably researched the question inside and out. That's literally setting you up for failure. I think you are right. 5 interview rounds, with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you weren't allowed to get sick, and you weren't allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8-4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 PM or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I didn't take the job. 5 interviews for entry level? That's insane. Also, I bet the hours between 4 and 6 were unpaid. It's bizarre they know they did something wrong but are so out of touch they can't see their own mistakes in front of them. Open bracket. Edit. I guess I got my first ever award overnight. Thank you. I was the only person that HR was able to source for a role and I still got rejected, comma. It's like that time that place was interviewing for a programmer position and required 10 years experience for a language that was only 8 years old. The inventor of the language applied and was rejected. Programming interviews have become increasingly laughable the last 5 years or so. I have 20 years of experience, and whenever I apply for a job, since my degree is not in CS, the algorithms all eject me out, and the ones I do get a face-to-face, they just send me an exam to take. Like, come on, man. My first interview ever was at DQ and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. So after accidentally slaying your predecessor, how's life been as the new Dairy Queen? Good idea you walked out of the interview. It would have been really depressing to work at a store where the owner yells at you every day. It was my best interview. Great rapport with the interviewer. Gave me the job on the spot. It for a transfer to QA at Johnson Control. Came into work the next day to have the offer rescinded. The job was already given to the plant manager's niece and it had only been posted because of company policy. The story is much longer and complicated afterward, but it was the first of several times I had been promoted at different companies and then been told, never mind. Edit. Appreciate the replies and awards. Feel like I won Reddit today. Edit. Wow. Johnson Controls is really not well liked. You're making me feel better about being ghosted by that company for a similar position a few years ago. After what I thought was a successful interview. Turned out management was maneuvering certain people to other divisions to save them from the sell-off that came a year later. We all got laid off. I had a Skype interview with a private practice and the lady interviewing me literally made it sound like a stern military parent. You can never be late. Mind you, the job was an hour away. Even if you have a cold you can never call in sick. IDK if this was meant for pre or post COVID. We're a small company so you won't have much of a work-life balance. PS our pay for all this dedication is only $3 more than the measly pay you're getting now. Just a whole interview of red flags. And the last one was when the lady messaged me immediately after saying I got the job and had to leave my job at maximum 5 days notice, regardless of me kind of bombing the interview and claiming there were other interviewees in line. I could see why they were having trouble hearing people tbh. So basically, you could live in the office broom closet, you'd be always on call and never late. Basically, it was only for a receptionist job and I doubt they had the manpower to hire 2 people. As the interviewer, candidate responded to a question I asked with, "Is that really how you want to spend our time together?" By asking me that question, when I wrote up my notes I included that bit. It obviously came up in the debrief and a huge red flag. Other interviewers also had similar, though not as serious, feedback on the candidate. He was not hired. As the interviewee, interviewer immediately launched into, with a rough accusatory tone, "You're a job hopper. Why are you a job hopper?" When I was being recruited for a role a few years ago, I'd been working successfully as an independent consultant for 7 or 8 years, which he equated with job hopping. I ended that interview pretty quickly with "I don't think this is going to be a good fit," and gave the recruiter some pointed feedback. He seemed to acknowledge that she was difficult. Is that really how you want to spend our time together? By asking me that question? What was the question? I got to know who was being ass here. That's definitely not the most professional way to handle it, if we're going to assume they have the exact right quote. However, I've had interviews for technical roles where HR employees ask stuff like "What kind of animal do you think you are?" and giving a response like "I don't think there's much real value in that question and I think I'd rather us discuss questions more relevant to the role as completely acceptable and professional. We're grown adults. I'm interviewing for a serious career opportunity. We should have a conversation like this is the case. Had a phone interview and the woman kept asking more and more intrusive questions. Kept hinting I'm a total piece of shit who's totally unfit for the job. It was the easiest job description ever, and jumping to conclusions about my life that were completely untrue. For example, I found out that being a freelancer who gets a lot of decently paid work each month is apparently living off my parents. She kept going on and on like that for quite a while before I told her to piss off and hung up. Didn't really need that job too badly, but it was in a different country so the travel aspect was the main reason. Years later I found out it was a stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Duck those people. Companies that do that are not worth working for. Open bracket. Edit. Such a simple comment, but never had that many upvotes. Thanks everyone. It sounds like negging, but in a professional context, anyone who falls over themselves to put up with shit treatment is far more likely to accept worse working conditions for longer. Had an interview at an office supply store once. Guy told me straight up it was a high pressure sales quota job. Their prices on computers and peripherals were shit and that's what I'd be selling. Dude straight up said it's a lot of work for low pay. Not a lot of people enjoy working there. And he finished off with the fact that he's been there for 18 years. Practically ran out of that interview screaming. Well, can't fault his honesty. If only more interviewers were like that. Hey, he was honest though. As the interviewee, I told them I hated salespeople when they asked why I'd left my last job, which exposed two things about me. I hadn't looked up the company I was interviewing with and that their primary line of business was sales. The mood got chilly real fast after that. Did not get the job. As the interviewer, had a guy ask if it was okay if he went to the restroom real fast and then never came back. His recruiter, who had come with him, was super embarrassed by the whole thing. Honestly, he was a young kid who'd just graduated, and while he was getting some of the more in-depth technical questions wrong, he definitely was asking the right questions in return. So we probably would have brought him on entry level. I think he was experiencing a case of imposter syndrome since we were asking him things he didn't know, so he panicked. Hope he received some coaching on how to handle that. So, why do interviewers ask those super specific questions to entry-level candidates? Does it have a hidden purpose or you just do it for the lols? Genuinely curious. Edit. Now I see it has a meaning. After all, thanks everybody for your input. This wasn't an entry-level job he was applying for, and we'd been burned in the past by people who interviewed well but couldn't hack it. He wasn't going to get that job, but he had enough promise that we definitely would have offered him something that could have helped build up that knowledge and experience. An interviewer told me that he worried I would be sexually harassed if I joined his team. Red flag. At least he was honest and you dodged a bullet. This is true. It's just wild because he basically admitted that sexual harassment was a huge problem in that company and that management made no attempt to control it. And further, that the only mechanism of control was to not hire women perceived as attractive. What a world. The first question they asked was a statistics exam type question. Took me completely off guard. I half-assed the answer. A complete answer would have taken half an hour. The next question was about a Punnett square analysis. I answered honestly and said that the first thing I would do would be to look it up. Errors in Punnett squares are incredibly common, and I wouldn't trust anyone who said they could do it off the top of their head. I'd look it up even if I'd done one last week. They really didn't like that answer. They wanted to know where my husband worked and where we lived, and they concluded that our 6-month rental location was completely incompatible with the commute to their location. The whole thing was just super weird. It was like they sat down determined to find a reason they should not hire me. I was relieved to get out of there. Edit. Brain fart. My apologies. Latin square, not Punnett square. Too much time spent quizzing my kid before his bio test. What was the job? Lab research? Why would you do Punnett squares and stats? Yep, research job. When he said I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day, then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. Was not my month. Would not have been surprised if you got a speeding ticket on the way home. Just not possible to get away from that shit fast enough. An agency sent me for an interview and said the starting salary is £33,000. The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, so what sort of salary are you looking for? So using the info I had from the agency I said, well, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point. The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary, and who did I think I was? He was paying £20,000. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.